Good morning and welcome to this video which is designed for students taking A-level English literature. And today's topic is a guide to academic reading. So my first question here is, well, what is academic reading? I mean, you'll have done plenty of reading all the way through your school career. You might have read novels, you might have read examples of other students' work, you'll have read some historical sources as well. But when you get to A-level, we introduce you to academic reading too. And this is what we term critical sources, or work by literary critics. And the job of a literary critic is to read a wide range of texts, to analyse them, possibly from a feminist or a post-colonial or a Marxist perspective, and to articulate their ideas in the form of an essay. And lots of literary critics might be professors or lecturers at university, for example. So the type of text that you'll be most familiar with is the novel itself. So we will already have studied the novel in a lot of depth. But if you turn to the front of your text, often there is what we call a critical introduction, where the person who's edited the text, the person who's put it together for publication, will introduce you to the key ideas and the key themes of the text. So that might be the first place that you would look for some critical reading. At the back of a text, there's also lots of notes, particularly if it's a very reputable publisher like this one. So you can see here we've got general notes kind of introducing you to key ideas in the text. We've got notes in the text which are explaining different ideas. So that's our first type of critical reading. The second type that you'll probably be very familiar with, probably from GCSE, is York Notes. So I've got an example here on Wide Sargasso Sea. You might also have seen this example on Othello if you're doing that for A-level. So this kind of text kind of digests the primary text for you, gives you key ideas about it, key interpretations of it. Now, I would say that this is a starting point. I wouldn't take this as being the primary critical text that you're going to look at, but it is a good starting point. You'll also be familiar possibly with an anthology that looks a little bit like this. This is the one that we have for AQA, A-level English literature, and in this there are essays, kind of general essays by post-colonial, Marxist, feminist, eco-critical critics, and the person who's put this anthology together has taken out the key ideas and summarised them in this book. So this is really useful as well. Moving on to books that you might look at a little bit more closely if you're an undergraduate student or if you really wanted to stretch yourself, we have books like this. Now, this one's called A Reader's Guide to Essential Criticism. Other books in this kind of genre would be the Cambridge Companions to Literature, which you can buy on Amazon on a whole range of texts. And what this kind of book does is it gives you a summary of the key ideas and the kind of journey of criticism that a text has gone through. So for example, in this particular version, the editor starts off by saying how Wide Sargasso Sea was initially received by the reviewers at the time. Then it talks about how most reviewers initially started thinking about it in terms of feminism. It moves on to show how post-colonialism became an increasingly important field of study for Wide Sargasso Sea. So it kind of takes you through a journey of the key critical viewpoints on a text. Of course, we have seminal critical texts as well, like this. Now, this is a copy of The Mad Woman in the Attic, which is a really, really fundamental critical text in the feminist genre. And I'm sure your teacher will have introduced this to you or a similarly fundamental text to you. So there's lots of options in terms of what to read. And if you're an A-level student, you should ask your teacher for some guidance in terms of where you should start, and they should be able to give you an idea. Now, the next question is, why do we do academic reading? Well, as far as I can see it, there are three reasons. So first of all, we want to confirm our ideas. So, for example, if you're interpreting Othello as being a challenge to the racist culture of the time, you might look for a literary critic who studied Othello in depth, who's able to give you something to back that idea up, to confirm it. You might also be looking to extend your ideas. So yes, maybe Othello is challenging the racism of the time, but what else is it doing? How can you add to that? How can you push that argument a little bit further? And you might also look at literary criticism to challenge your ideas. So it's all very well having a particular opinion, but how could someone argue against that? And do those arguments point out any holes in your own particular piece of work? So these are the three main reasons why we're looking at this type of reading. And I suppose it's a discussion. All of these books that I've pointed out already are in discussion about the meaning of a particular text, in this case, Why Sargasso Sea. And as A-level students, you're starting to enter that academic discussion. And your piece of coursework will be a part of that discussion, hopefully. So, next question, how to do academic reading? Well, you'll need some tools. You'll need a highlighter. I would suggest having different colours of pens and pencils and so on, you know, depending on what stationery you've got at home. Now, the easiest way I find to do this is to have a photocopy or a printout of the text. In some cases, you know, this is my copy of my text, so I can feel free to read or highlight. If it's not your own copy, I would say get a photocopy or a printout. And that also means that you can write as much as you want on the essay. So in this particular example, you can see that I've read through, I've highlighted what I want to, but I've also annotated in depth. And that's really important. And what you need to know is what you're looking for. So it's helpful to have narrowed down the focus of your coursework already at this stage and to know, am I doing a feminist reading? Am I doing a post-colonial reading? What is it that I'm looking for in this critical essay? So you highlight the points that are going to be useful for you and then you annotate them. And you might want to think about these questions as you're annotating. So how does this relate to the topic that I am studying? You know, what is the relevance of this idea to what I'm interested in? So, for example, here, I've said Mrs. Rochester in Jane Eyre, whose betrayal Reese regarded as so distorted that she wrote her novel in response to it. Well, that's going to back up a feminist reading of the text. So I'm annotating that, saying how and why is Bronte's Bertha distorted? Bronte's inherent bias against Creole. So I'm also looking at post-colonial reading there. So I'm all the time thinking not just about what it means, but how this text relates to what I'm looking at, what I'm interested in. So how does this relate to the argument I'm forming? Is the next question. So as you're creating a piece of coursework or an essay, you're going to be constructing an argument, putting forward your point of view and trying to persuade the reader that your point of view is valid and it is correct. So do these ideas, do they confirm, do they extend, do they challenge your argument? The next thing you might think of is what section of your primary text could you use to back this up? Well, you can see here, for example, this critic has been talking about the symbolism of the Sargasso Sea, and so I've started annotating, thinking about, right, what is the symbolism of the novel's title? There are gaps, there are separations in relationships, there's the elision or the removal of particular events from the text, so I'm starting to think about specific examples from the novel that I could use in relation to this idea. And I've started to think there about the symbolism of the sea again, so additional language analysis that I could add in. And you could also ask yourself, do I agree or disagree? And why is that? So for this point here, for example, in a lot of criticism of Why Sargasso Sea, critics have said that the main character, Antoinette, is a passive victim of the patriarchy. And if I was reading a text that said that, the kind of things I'd be writing in the margin are, what about when she attacks Rochester? What about when she uses Obeah to try to seduce Rochester and gain more control over the relationship? Because I'd be disagreeing with that statement that she's a completely passive victim of the patriarchy. So my top tips for this are, you need to think about the big picture. So the topic you're studying, the argument you're forming, what are the big ideas that you're getting from the critical essay that you've read? And also to take notes with precision. Now, I've said already, it's really useful to have a printout that you can write on. If you don't have that luxury and maybe you're using a book from the library, I would suggest that you take some notes, something like this. Now, I've taken this from a video that's on a website called Massalit, but what you'll notice here is that I've been really precise in my note taking. So I've put the date that I've accessed this on, because that's important for when you're referencing later. I've put the title, I've put where I've got this from, I've put the name of the person who created this analysis. And then I've taken really specific notes about the ideas that I'm interested in. And you'll see here, for example, that I've put this in quotation marks. Now, the reason for that is that if I want to quote this particular critic later on, I might want to know it word for word. So when I put it in quotation marks, I'm indicating that this is precisely what that person has said. If you were taking these notes from a book, the other thing that I would put with each line is a page number. So page, I don't know, 57 or whatever it is. Because again, when you're referencing later on, you're going to have really precise notes to help you make those references. And I'm going to make a separate video about how to reference. Okay, so good luck in your reading. I hope you enjoy it. And as you're reading, I would remember to do these things here and make sure that you keep your notes really precise. Thank you very much for watching.